योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोतं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि। आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम्।
In today's episode, we will see Baddha Konasana. Baddha Konasana is a seated pose or a pose in the Upavishta Sthiti. In this pose, the heels are brought close to the perineum, the tailbone itself is taken deep towards the heel, and the knees are opened on either side. This is a wide pose where the pelvis is well opened, the joints of the pelvis, knee and ankle also are well opened. Traditionally, Indian cobblers are known to sit in this pose, and therefore it is also called the cobbler pose. Let us proceed and see how to do Baddha Konasana. Now we'll take you through the instructions for Baddha Konasana. Like with all sitting poses, Baddha Konasana also starts with Doordarshan. Keeping the legs stretched out in front of you, press the thighs down, press the shins down, extend the heel away such that this heel bone, that is the heel pad, sharply extends away. The mounds of the feet are active, the big toe mounds are extending away, and the outer edge of the foot is turned back. With this Baddha Konasana, Doordarshan, where the legs are steady, the practitioner has to lift the chest, lift the sternum, roll the shoulders sharply back. From there, one leg after the other, you draw into a wide angle as with Baddha Konasana. When the legs come together, it's important that the entire feet are evenly joined together. You're not going to have one foot ahead of the other or the partial contact between the feet such that one is open, one is closed. Both legs should be touching each other at the soles of the feet. With this action, you'll have to roll the chest up, lift the sternum up, take the back ribs in. This is the preliminary position where from Doordarshan you draw the legs in for Baddha Konasana. In Baddha Konasana, the heel should be close to the perineum or the groin, but that is one section of it. After finishing this, you'll have to press the hands and make sure you slightly lift the hips in the air and move the tailbone and sacrum sharply in towards the heel such that there are two ways in which this closes up. One is the heel is drawn close to the perineum, close to the groin. The other, without the tailbone exiting, the tailbone and the sacrum must also engage forward. I will show you that once again. Take the hips back. Here there is a distance. Take the hips back a little more. And the more there is a distance, I'd like you to observe that the knees are up. Because when the knees are up, the pelvis closes. When the knees go up, the pelvis closes. Now, the knees is in a relaxed position. But from here, first the heel is taken closer to the perineum. Here, the more the heel goes closer, you see that the knees descend a little more because the pelvis opens. But more, when you press your hands, lift the buttock up, push the tailbone and sacrum forward and then settle down, making sure the pubis is up, then you see that the descent of the knees is far more towards the ground because the face of the pelvis is open. In Baddha Konasana, the hip and pelvis must be completely opened. One way to do that is to get the heels close, and to complete that, it's important that the buttocks are not out. Moving the buttock forward, the sacrum tailbone must also be taken close to the heel. In that position, you have to roll the shoulders back, lift your chest up. The practitioner at the beginning stage must get the hands forward and interlock the hands around the toes. Keeping the hands firmly wrapped around the toes, the sternum should be lifted sharply up, the shoulders should be relaxed. The shoulder should be taken towards the back of the socket. So, holding with the assistance or support of the hand, the spine should be given a sharp lift. The activation of the back ribs should be from back to front to make sure that the entire surface of the spine is lifted with an open pelvis and the knees rolling down towards the ground. Again, it's not about crashing the knee to the ground, it's about opening the pelvis by which the knee has liberty to travel down towards the ground. This will be the first stage for a beginner. Then the practitioner should undo the hand and in the intermediate stage keep the hands behind the buttock, palm pressed towards the ground. Placing the palm on the ground, sharply take the shoulders back. Now as you see, the spine has to lift independently against a crisp cut of the thigh down. Maintaining the thigh down, maintaining the knee down, you have to press the palm and raise the spine. Here, the hand doesn't take the support of the leg where the hand is interlocked around the foot. The spine has to rise against the opening of the knee. This is a bit more challenging. The first one would be the beginner stage. The second one would be after a few months of practice. I would now like to clarify some actions about Baddha Konasana. While we start with Dandasana and fold one leg to Baddha Konasana, the other leg is in Dandasana. Now, when we get the leg close, I would like to demonstrate that the farther the leg is away, the more the knee stays raised. When the leg comes close to the perineum, you have to gently be able to descend the knee down. This descent of the knee cannot happen if the groin is tight. So, consciously a practitioner must relax the groin. By relaxing the groin is the direction of spread of groin is in to out. So, when the groin closes, this is a tight knee. As a practitioner mentally, consciously relaxes the groin, it has an effect where the knee is allowed to go towards the floor. So the action of the knee is directly connected to the action of the pelvis and groin. The more the groin is consciously relaxed, gently pried open from the inner to the outer groin, the rotation of the thigh is from in to out. The more that is consciously done, the more the movement of the knee to the floor is natural. Many times you see that the knee, please take your leg to Baddha Konasana. If the knee is stiff and the knee doesn't go to the floor, you see people holding the leg, and very many times the knee is hit to the floor in this manner. Here the action happens only through the knee. However, while this is important, while descending the knee is important, the action of the knee or the mobility of the knee is connected to the mobility of the pelvis. The more the groin relaxes, here for example, the more I rotate the groin out, the more the knee has an ability to travel down towards the floor. The more the groin tightens, the more the knee will lift. So as you consciously relax the groin, the knee has a natural descent towards the floor. So we have to understand that the mobility of the knee is directly linked to the mobility of the pelvic joints. Now, I would like to further emphasize on one more point. Just like we saw in standing poses like Trikonasana, where we mentioned that the turning doesn't happen through the foot. It's indeed the groin that opens, the thigh, entire thigh that turns in such a way. When we are with the foot turned in front, it is the outer thigh, but when we turn our foot, we are actually accessing the inner thigh and the groin. Here also, when we rotate the thigh out, we are accessing the inner thigh. For Baddha Konasana, the action of the groin relaxing and opening, the inner thigh spreading to get the knee to the floor is important. I'll use a rope to further clarify this action. Now, this is a rope that we commonly use in Iyengar Yoga. I'd like you to stretch one leg out. I'm inserting the rope. I'm putting it around the knee and I'm asking the practitioner to further fold the leg. That leg will open to Baddha Konasana, Dandasana. Here, as you see, the knee is up. If I'm able to pull the inner length of the thigh via the inner knee, you can see I gently release it and I'm able to get the knee down. When I release it, the knee ascends again. So it is the opening of the inner thigh that is able to get the knee to the ground. Here the groin opens, the thigh is a long thigh due to which the knee complies. That is an action that we have to understand. We saw two approaches to Baddha Konasana, one for beginners where the hands were interlocked around the feet, the second where the hands were placed by the sides of the hip to raise the spine. Then we used a rope to show the action of how the openness of the hip is related to the opening of the knee and how the thigh should be widened on the inner side, spread on the inner side so that the hip gives access to open the knee. We did this using a rope, but there is a way by which a practitioner can do it themselves in the practice of Baddha Konasana. Taking the two thumbs, wedging it inside the inner joint of the knee, you have to widen the hands to the side, and you can see it has the same action of the rope. And as you widen your hands to the side, you get the knees down to the floor once again through the hip via the inner thigh through the knee. We can have a practitioner do it for themselves, where the practitioner inserts the thumb into the inner joint of the knee, prise widens, that is, you have to rotate the palm. Holding the knee, you have to rotate the palm from in to out such that the thighs open, and with that you will have to get the knees via the opening of the hips and thighs towards the floor as the chest remains up, the shoulders remain relaxed but wide, and the entire anterior face of the spine is lifted. How do we know that the anterior face of the spine is lifted? It's well aligned to the pillar, so just like the pillar stands tall and straight, the spine that aligns with the pillar is also made to stand tall and straight against the thigh that is well rooted on the ground. This is the third variation that may be practiced. We will now show you ways by which properties can be used to better one's practice of Baddha Konasana. Here, quickly as a recap, I will show you how to go to Baddha Konasana. Usually it's done from Dandasana, where you draw leg by leg to Baddha Konasana. Here, quickly I'm just going to Baddha Konasana. Usually when a practitioner or a beginner sits in Baddha Konasana, there are two things that will always happen. The spine will come forward, the spine will collapse, and the knees will come up. You will see commonly people struggling to sit in Baddha Konasana with the thighs open, hips open, and the spine erect. Usually it will collapse like this, where the anterior or the frontal face of the spine is closed and the knees ascend up. A Baddha Konasana should always be where the knees are able to descend to the floor through the hip, where the spine is able to rise from that. But this requires work. We will show you variations by which props can be used to assist this. First, in order to lift the spine and slide the knees, thighs down, we can use height such as bolster. We can also use a small stool or a block. Here, in order to support the entire space of the pelvis, we are using a bolster. The minute we sit on a bolster, you can see that we sit on a bolster, draw the heels as close to the bolster as possible. Immediately there is a change in the spine remains lifted and the thighs slide downward. That is, the thigh opens and the knee goes away. This is different from the previous pose where I sat down, I collapsed my spine and the knees were up. The minute the practitioner sits on an elevation, the spine gets a boost from where the thigh can be rested to the floor, rested downward. Now, sometimes some people may experience strain on the unsupported part of the leg. If you see here, my hips and thighs are supported, but when it goes to the knees are not entirely supported. Here, we could use a blanket to address that. This is a rolled blanket. I will now show you how to roll it. On a folded blanket, along its length, you crisply and tightly make a roll of the blanket in a way that you're able to get a firm roll. Once you get a firm roll, you then support the outer corners of your knee, both on the right and left. Here, not only does it help open and spread my thighs and touch my knee downward towards a prop, that is one thing, it also offers support such that the knee strain is lessened. Here, supporting the outer knees and supporting the hips, the spine can raise up, against which the thighs can be gently opened downward, pelvis can be opened. This is a way by which the spine as well as the hips and knee, all three are addressed. Sometimes, even when we use a bolster to sit, it's possible that the spine doesn't align in a vertical manner where the anterior face of the spine is sharply lifted. It is possible that the head comes forward and the spine still hangs forward, stoops forward. There, we can use a pillar or the frontal surface of a wall to address this. A pillar is even better. Placing a bolster against the pillar, we then move back in such a way that the hip or the buttock is completely wedged against the pillar, such that when the hip lands on the bolster, you're able to have the back completely wedged against the wall, upon which you're able to lift the chest up. Here the space you see is dorsal engagement, though the lower back is firmly placed against the wall. This contact shouldn't become this. This is wrong. This space at the lower back is wrong. You must direct the abdomen such that the lower back is placed on the wall against which the chest raises up. Here, using the verticality of the pillar, we build the verticality of the spine, cutting the shoulders sharply back. This is commonly done so that not only can the practitioner use the pillar to improve one's Baddha Konasana and the spinal position, but also one can do this for many minutes and therefore spend time establishing this position, therefore resting against a wall or using the wall or pillar as a surface against which Baddha Konasana is built can be done for prolonged correction. We are now using the third prop, which is a belt, and we'll show you how it helps further establish a proper Baddha Konasana. In Baddha Konasana, as we mentioned, the idea is to get the heel as close to the perineum and also the tailbone sharply engaged forward. The way in which the pelvis is organized is absolutely essential in Baddha Konasana. The hip should be open. When the hip opens, the knee then opens. It is via the joint of the hip that we travel towards the knee. Therefore, how does the hip open? The heel has to come closer to the hip, and the hip, as in the tailbone, sacrum, has to go closer to the heel. When both of them come close, the knees spread wide apart. But many times when you go to Baddha Konasana, people are not able to bring or bridge the distance between the heel and the perineum. When this partial opening, where the heel is not closed and the tailbone is not engaged, when this partial opening happens, the knees also experience a strain because it doesn't have the permission of the hip to open. We'll see how a belt can be used. First, what happens is a student should take a looped belt. This is already a belt that has been looped. You will be opening the belt wide, putting the belt around you. The belt at the back is placed at the top of the buttock muscle or the area of the sacrum. I'd like to caution you that the belt should not ascend to the lumbar. The belt must be placed around the sacrum or the top of the buttock muscle. If it goes on the lumbar, it will strain the lumbar forward. So once again, be cautious as to where you're placing the belt. It goes over the top, around the sacrum, over the top of the buttock muscle. The other end of the belt is looped over the foot. I'd like you to remind you that in Baddha Konasana, the first position was where the hand interlocked around the foot. Here the belt does it for you. The belt goes around the foot. Then you start to tighten the strap of the belt until you can make the belt very tight, and then further draw the heel on your own closer to the perineum. Keeping the heel closer to the perineum, as the belt gets looser, you must continue to tighten it so that you're absolutely fixing the heel towards the perineum. As you do that, you still see that there is a gap between the heel and the perineum. There, the tailbone or the buttock must be moved forward towards the heel, and the gap between the heel and the perineum must be absolutely bridged. There you further tighten the belt. As you see, as you go on tightening the belt starts to hold the position for you. It holds you in a position where it habituates the hip to open, the tailbone to participate, the heel to come into alignment. Here, you can keep the pose for some time and make sure the body trains itself to be in this position, thus holding a proper Baddha Konasana and making it a practice over time. We now saw detailed instructions as to how to do Baddha Konasana and also saw how props may be used to make the pose more approachable and effective. Baddha Konasana is a pose in the seated state or Upavishta Sthiti. I would like to add that we saw a few variations as to how props may be used, but the usage of props are truly numerous. Depending on a person's constitution and condition, props may be adapted in several ways by which an asana can be made effective. This must be studied under the guidance of an experienced instructor. A general note on properties itself. In situations where we are unable to do a pose or we find a pose hard or inaccessible, props guide us through our physical, mental and physiological barriers, help break them, help get past them and make a pose doable, approachable and help towards fructification and successful completion of the pose. In some cases where a person can easily do an asana, props help challenge their practice and therefore better it. Therefore, props act as a guide and a teacher in a way that it constantly helps the practitioner refine, rectify and better their practice. Hence, props are kept in a high place of reverence in Iyengar yoga. Going to the benefits of Baddha Konasana, Baddha Konasana is truly a boon for practitioners. People with problems of the hip and knee, degenerative conditions such as osteoarthritis of the hip and knee greatly benefit from the practice of Baddha Konasana. Women with menstrual problems such as amenorrhea, dysmenorrhea or problems with regularity of the cycle are also helped with Baddha Konasana, especially when they are coupled with inversions. Pregnant women are also greatly helped with the practice, as well as men with prostrate issues find great relief through the practice of Baddha Konasana. Hence, Baddha Konasana should not be dismissed as an easy sitting pose. When done correctly, it can greatly help a practitioner in various ways. Also, for the practice of pranayama, one must be able to sit extensively. Baddha Konasana helps spread the paraspinal muscles and also build strength in the spine itself, keeping the pelvis relaxed and open. All of these are important for a constant and established practice of pranayama. Hence, this pose in the Upavishta Sthiti must be practiced regularly on a daily basis. Thank you.